Welcome to part 2 of Biker Bushcraft on a Budget.
Okay, so a few minor changes since I went over the gear, but I'll start with the stuff you already know. The shovel, gloves, my food, dry food bag, and I went shopping. So got my Fig Newtons. I like snacking on those. It's just a favorite of mine. And I've got some mixed nuts and chocolate and whatever the heck it is. A trail mix kind of thing. Corned beef hash for the morning. Baked beans for the night. And I only had a couple of salt and peppers, so I had these around, and so I threw them in the pack. Now, you probably noticed that I didn't show any of my usual water containers when I went over the gear. That's because when I went to the grocery store, I just bought a gallon of water, threw that on there. You don't need to buy a fancy stainless steel water container to try this for your first time. Remember, this is about keep it cheap, keep it simple. Find out if you want to do this. So I bought a gallon of water. My coffee filters and sugar, my pot, my cups in there, my pan. Now, the one thing that I added is a cooler. So, as if you've been watching my videos, you know, I like steak. And I wanted to have a steak. Now, a steak, you've got, with meat in general, you got a danger zone from 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And you've got a window of about 2 hours in that temperature range to where meat becomes dangerous. And I don't want to get sick. And I don't want any of you to get sick. So I put it in my cooler. Now, you can get a cooler for about $7, a size soft cooler. I recommend it. I picked one up at a Rite Aid store, I think it was, for $7. This one, I think, was $12. So they're fairly inexpensive. And what I did, I typically would get a bag of ice, but in fact, this time all they had was blocks. So I got a block ice in here, a couple of eggs for the morning, and rather than buy a fancy egg container, I've got just cut off a section of the egg carton, put my rubber band around it, and that's plenty protected. It's not going anywhere. Got some green beans for tonight, some butter, some steak, and all that's sitting in here in my block of ice until I'm ready for it. So, there you have it. That's all of the gear that we went over. A couple items we didn't. Now, there's one other item I added. As many of you are probably aware, California right now is on fire. It's a bad situation, and this isn't the ideal circumstance to have a campfire. I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to here or whether it would just be the steel barbecues. There is a fire pit here, but this is really a dry area, and the wind is blowing, and I'm questioning whether it would be prudent to have a campfire. For the sake of a video, I'm not going to take a chance on burning down the forest. So I'm still up in the air whether I'm going to use it, but I brought a contingency plan. These little folding stoves, again, cost almost nothing. You can get them at any place that has camping gear. You can get them at like a Big Five or a Walmart or a Kmart or you name it. So they're readily available. They fold down, they're small, and they actually work pretty well. I suppose you could probably use regular firewood underneath these. Never tried it, but I'm sure it's possible. But a couple of cans of Sterno, and again, you can get this at any hardware store, some grocery stores, just about anywhere. And you've got a cooking solution. So if you can't have a fire, this is a way that you can still cook, and it's relatively compact. It doesn't take a lot of space. It doesn't take any real effort to use, and it's inexpensive. So if you buy one of these things, it's not like you're going to be throwing away a bunch of money. All told, with the extra stuff and everything that, you know, the cordage, the canvas, everything else, I'm still under $50 to do this. And with what I've got, barring a little more food that I would have needed to bring, I'm good for a couple of nights, 3 nights. You know, a gallon of water is a little light. I would want probably more water. The creek down here is dry, so I can't get water here. But if I'm camping somewhere where there's a water source and I can boil water in my pot, then water isn't a concern, and I just need to add another day or two's worth of food. And I'm set. Stay out here with this equipment pretty much as long as I want. Okay, the wind died down. I think it's safe to light a fire. I'm going to go ahead and light a very small fire. Keep it down to pretty much coals, but something to cook over. So, got my tinder bundle here. A lot of this is the shavings from the tent stakes, the tent pole, the baton, and it's a great little pile of tinder. I've also got some leaves that are already in here. Now, I didn't talk about, when I laid out the gear, fire starting. Obviously, I like a fire steel. It's easy, it works well. But you know what? You probably got a lighter at home. And so there's nothing wrong with a lighter. It works. You get a little Bic lighter that'll last you, I don't know how long. My Zippo typically will run out of fluid periodically. But now, one of the bushcrafters out there talks about putting a bicycle inner tube over the Zippo lighter to keep it from evaporating, which I think is a fantastic idea. And I just haven't done that yet, but that's gonna happen. The Bic lighter works fine. These work fine. Whatever you happen to have, you don't need to go buy a fire starter. I'm gonna throw the leaves I have in there. And I'm just gonna take my tinder bundle, I'm gonna put them right in the middle of the fire pit. Now, I might want to, if I was using my fire steel, I might want to light it out here on the piece of bark that it's sitting on, but with the lighter, it'll light where it is. I've got really good tinder, and it's gonna light right up. Put a little bit of the kindling that I acquired from making my baton on here. That's one thing about bushcraft. You use everything. As you create things by making other things, you use what you've made. So while I break beans, I'm going to tell a story about a camping trip I was on once. So my wife and I took a ride. We were going to go camp for a weekend on a friend's gold claim. I'd been up there once before, and nice place, way out of the middle of nowhere. So we stopped at someone's house for dinner on the way up. left there in the dark. And as it turns out, that particular year, there had been some severe flooding right before we left, like the week before. So when we left dinner and headed off in the dark, we knew where our turnoff was, just had to look for the sign. Well, somewhere along the way, the sign had been washed away. There was no sign. And so the first sign that we saw was Reno 15 miles. Where we were going was quite a ways from Reno. But we figured, well, we've gone this far, we may as well go into Reno for the night. It doesn't make any sense to turn around and head back and try and find our turnoff that maybe or maybe we couldn't find. So we went into Reno. Well, this was Memorial Day weekend. And first of all, finding a room in Reno in Memorial Day weekend is not an easy thing to do. Finding a cheap room in Reno on Memorial Day weekend is an even harder thing to do. And showing up on a motorcycle as a couple of greasy bikers looking for a room in Reno on Memorial Day weekend ain't happening. So anyway, we tried several places. Ultimately, we stopped in a casino to eat dinner. And finally gave up on a place to sleep in Reno. It wasn't happening. But it's Memorial Day weekend. We figured, what the heck, it's only about 150 miles to home. We'll just ride home. So, got on the bike, headed up on Highway 80. Now, a funny thing about Highway 80 is even on Memorial Day weekend in May, when it's nice and hot everywhere else, it ain't hot on Donner Summit. So we're getting along and we stopped at Boomtown to check there for a room, and it's getting colder. There was no room. So we carried on. We stopped in Donner. No room, and it's freezing. I mean, it's just cold. And I didn't have the windshield on the bike. And neither one of us were dressed for winter conditions, and it was definitely winter conditions. So we carried on. And at this point, my wife has taken her pillow, which she carries a down pillow everywhere we go, and put it down the front of her jacket in order to keep warm, which was actually a really good idea. Unfortunately, the temperatures were down in the 30s at this point, and it was only marginally helpful. And she and I hadn't been together for that long. She hadn't taken that many motorcycle trips, so she was not really prepared for this. So as we carried on, I watched her becoming more and more miserable. Felt bad for her. And I came across this sign, one of the little tent signs along the side of the road, somewhere up near Nyack. So we pulled in, and it's dark. I don't know what time it was, but middle of the night. It's dark. It's cold. We're freezing. We really didn't care. I mean, we'd have camped in the middle of a gravel parking lot at that point. We did have camp gear, of course, because we were going camping. So we found the first vacant campsite that we could find. Pulled into it. Pulled the bike up. And we had gotten our, paid our money, gotten our tag and everything. And so I started setting up the tent, and my wife took to setting up the fire. And, well, I'll tell you, when she's cold, she can build a fire. I'm pretty sure it was something like 30 seconds she had a roaring bonfire. But it was comfortable and appreciated. So we sat by the fire for a while and warmed up, then crawled into the tent and crashed out for the night. Woke up in the morning, and if we'd have reserved a campsite, if we'd have picked it out of a travel magazine and found the ultimate place to go camp for vacation, we couldn't have done this well. This campsite was amazing. We woke up, we were surrounded by boulders, and just giant boulders. On the other side of those boulders was the river. It was just one of the most incredible places I've ever camped. And it was just a fluke. We just happened to camp right by the boulders on the other side of the boulders from the river. So we had a great night. Woke up in the morning, cooked up some breakfast over the campfire, had a great breakfast, and rode the 100 miles or so home. And to this day, and it's been a long time, it's been, 21 years ago since we did that. That's still one of our favorite camping stories that we share with people when we talk about camping. So the moral of this story is you absolutely never know when you get to a campsite or when you pull over to the side of the road what you're going to find. And if you stop in the dark and you can't see, you don't necessarily know what you're going to wake up to. But every experience could be one of those lifelong memories that you never want to forget. My beans are broken. My fire's getting close to coals. I think it's almost time to start cooking. So you're probably wondering how I'm going to cook 3 things with a pot and a fry pan. Well, the first thing I'm going to do, I've got some stones in this fire, and I'm just going to set my beans in here right on the stones. They're opened up, so they're not going to explode. They'll heat up. This is the cooler stones. There's some coals around them, but they're not really hot, so they're just going to slowly heat the beans. Now my green beans, another story. I need them over the fire. So I've got this stick, and I'm going to try to get everything positioned here so I can get some pretty good heat on this. Put some rocks on the end of it. And there we go. That should boil those beans pretty good, the green beans. Then my fry pan, I've got another flat rock here. And that one's in the coals, surrounded by coals, even has a little bit of flame. So I'm going to be heating up the cast iron pan, and that's going to help cook the steak. I've got some butter in the pan, so it's well seasoned. So I should be able to cook all 3 things here, get them nice and heated up, and have a pretty good dinner. Think it's food. Oh yeah. The steak wrapped up on me a little bit, but it's good. Medium rare. All right, let's see how this came out. Try the steak first, because that's what matters to me. Oh man, that's great. It's a ribeye. It couldn't be better. It's medium rare. It's exactly the way I like it. The beans, perfect temperature. They're warm. I mean, they're already baked, so you can't really go wrong, but they're good temperature. And I did put a little butter in the beans, the green beans here. Man, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Not overdone, not mushy, not underdone, not stringy. They're, oh man, this is just about the best green beans I've had in I don't know how long. Well, so that's how I cook it, using a pot. And like I said, you can use a saucepan. Just bring whatever you got at home. Small saucepan's good. Frying pan, and again, bring whatever you have at home, but I really recommend cast iron if you got it. And if you don't have cast iron at home, get some. It's good stuff. So that's using that. And I cooked the beans in the can, and that worked out just fine. So I've got a 3-course meal. I'm very happy. I'm going to sit here and enjoy my dinner. Well, good morning. We've got a fire going. Got some water on to get my coffee. So we're off to a good start. Got a little colder than I expected last night, about 10 degrees colder than they forecast, and would recommend getting some kind of a sleeping mat like I normally carry. Forgot how uncomfortable it can get sleeping on just straight on the ground. One of the options that exists is you can get 2 blankets. I unfortunately didn't have a second wool blanket for this trip, so I had just the ground cloth and the single wool blanket. It was pretty cold, not terribly comfortable, but again, I did get some sleep. So we'll let this water come to a boil, make some coffee, and then we'll start on breakfast. So I talked about how to make coffee without the drip through funnel thing, just using some filters. And my water's coming close to a boil, so it's time to start preparing the coffee. And like I said, you can go and just get a small package of coffee filters at the grocery store. And hopefully they will be easier to open than these. There. Filter's open. I'll put them, keeping them in a Ziploc, they'll be fine. So, get some filters. Just put the filter right there in the cup. Pour a little coffee in there. Oh, about that much. Or however much you want. I like my coffee really strong. I like to taste it. And then, as soon as the water boils, we'll just pour the water in. As I'm pouring the water in, I'm going to start with the filter down low, and I'm going to start pulling it out as it fills. And that'll work just fine to filter my coffee. When I'm done, set my filter down, and I've got a cup of coffee. Okay, water's in a nice hard boil, heavy boil. Wet my grounds, let them get good and soaked, and you can see now it's all the way down in the cup. Now, I'm just going to start filling that filter up. Kind of keep an eye on it, make sure I don't end up with coffee over the edge of the filter. There are easier ways to make coffee. This makes the best tasting coffee, so I definitely put taste over ease any day. They have the little coffee packs. Of course, you could go with instant, but this way I get a decent cup of coffee. It tastes good, and don't have to have a lot of extra equipment. I'm sure you saw in my earlier video that I do have my little collapsible coffee drip maker, and that works. But you know, if you're not wanting to spend any money, go out and give this a try, not buy anything extra. Here you go. Here's a quick and dirty way to get your coffee. Nothing works right till I get a little bit of coffee in me in the morning. Cheers. Everything's cleaned up and packed up. Working on getting that fire out. I put my ice in the fire. I'm gonna have to break it up a little bit shortly here. And any water that I generated, washing dishes and what have you, I also put on the fire to work on getting that fire out. So now it's time to move over to tearing down my tarp structure and my bedroll. So it's worked out well. I've already got everything kind of folded up here. What I'm going to do is just set it on the bike out of the way. And then tearing down the tarp structure is exactly the opposite of putting it up, of course. Well, everything's all packed up, site's cleaned up. All that's left is my tent pole, my tent stakes, my baton, my kettle stick and Y stick, and I'm going to leave those for the next person to use as firewood or to use the way I did, however that turns out. I want to thank everybody for watching this video. I hope you took away some new information or at least found some comedic or interesting tidbits. I want to thank everybody who's commented, especially Scylla Loves to Fish. You've obviously watched every one of my videos, commented on everyone. Thank you. Shooting these videos is really a hard thing to do because you don't know if people are going to like it until after the fact. And I appreciate the comments from people telling me that they do like what I'm doing. It really helps inspire me to do more. And so those who are really following what I'm doing and comment on it, thank you, thank you, thank you. This video was intended to show you how you can get your feet wet in bushcraft motorcycle camping. How you can take what you've got around the house, put it to use, take it out in the field, go spend a weekend out in the bush, and enjoy yourself without spending a lot of money. This is just one example. I'm sure as you go along, you're going to discover things that work better for you and make those changes. This is all about your comfort. Bushcraft is all about bringing the tools out into the bush and making the things there that make you comfortable. It's not about survivalism. It's not about doing without. It's about being comfortable, but not bringing a truckload of gear with you. I do want to again acknowledge Dave Canterbury and the Pathfinder School for the tarp structure setup that I used. Never used it before. Really, I'm impressed. It was comfortable, it was roomy, it had more room than the plow point style that I typically use. So that was fantastic. I also want to mention that that's the first time I tried that structure. Didn't go up as smoothly as I would have liked, and the video may not be as polished as I would like because of learning something new. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you again for watching. Please like, share, comment. If you have questions, please put them in the comment section. And I hope you will get out there and give this a try. Thank you again for watching. See you on the next video.